This genuinely is going to be a short point. I know I often say I will make short points and I don't. So, very simply, the treatises that I refer to a lot, the European historical fencing treatises or weapon use treatises, from the medieval period right the way through to the beginning of the 20th century, were often not written for absolute rank beginners. Now, that is a statement alone. There are many exceptions to it and caveats to it. Generally speaking, the later in period you go, the more like a manual, a beginner's manual they become, and the less like a treatise. So, difference between a treatise and a manual. Generally speaking, a treatise is a work of expertise written for your peers. So people who are already experts in fencing read a treatise, they meditate upon it and they decide whether they agree or disagree with it. It's essentially more like a doctorate presentation to people who know about the subject. Whereas a manual is generally, you know, what it sounds like. It's a basic beginner's explaining from the bottom up how you do a thing. So yes, there are manuals in from the 19th century in sabre and in cutlass, and there's manuals in fact in using firearms as well, and through to bayonet training, because these were, some of these were for soldiers who essentially had relatively little or no experience in the use of those weapons before they entered the military service. However, if you go earlier, if you go into the Renaissance, for example, and obviously into the Middle Ages even earlier, then treatises were really written for people who already knew about fencing. Okay? And it's very important from the outset to understand, when you're looking at medieval treatises or Renaissance treatises, they were almost without exception written for people who already knew about fencing. Therefore, they often don't explain the absolute basics. So therefore, if you're going to study those treatises, try and find a way of learning the basics of fencing or fighting in that period, i.e. from an experienced teacher or some other form of martial art, and it will aid you in understanding these treatises that were written for essentially experienced people. Thank you.